-$4 million. That is not a metaphor. That is not a rounding error. In 1988, a 28-year-old man named Dave Ramsey sat in a bankruptcy courtroom in Nashville, Tennessee, and watched everything he had built disappear. $4 million in real estate, gone. In less than 2 years. He had done everything the modern financial system told him to do. He had borrowed smart. He had leveraged correctly. He had followed the rules. And the rules destroyed him. Now here is the part of this story that most people have never heard. 2,000 years before Dave Ramsey was born, a Roman philosopher named Seneca wrote a series of letters that described with frightening precision exactly the financial mistake Ramsey was making. Letter by letter, principle by principle. A blueprint for a collapse that would not happen for another 2 millennia. This is that story. And at the end of it, you will understand why what happened to Dave Ramsey is probably happening to you too. Right now, just with smaller numbers. Dave Ramsey grew up in Antioch, Tennessee. He was not born wealthy. He was born ambitious. He earned his real estate license at 18 years old. By his early 20s, he was buying properties across Tennessee, flipping them, renting them, building a portfolio that most people twice his age would never achieve. At his peak. And this is important to understand. Dave Ramsey held a real estate portfolio worth $4 million. In 1980s money, adjusted for inflation, that is well over $12 million today. He was not reckless. He was not a gambler. He was a disciplined, intelligent, hard-working young man who understood his market. The banks adored him. Short-term loans, rolling credit lines, 90-day callable notes. The entire financial apparatus of modern America was pointing at Dave Ramsey and saying, "This young man knows exactly what he is doing." He believed them. For a time, it worked perfectly. Now travel back. Not decades, centuries. Rome. Approximately 65 AD. The most powerful city on earth. A man named Lucius Annaeus Seneca is sitting in his study, writing a letter to his friend Lucilius. He has been writing these letters for years. They will survive for 2,000 years. And in one of them, he describes a financial trap so precisely that you would swear he had seen Dave Ramsey's bank statements. Seneca was not poor. He was one of the wealthiest men in Rome, worth the equivalent of hundreds of millions in modern currency. Advisor to emperors, the most celebrated writer of his age. But unlike Ramsey, Seneca had built his wealth on a principle that the modern financial world has almost completely forgotten. He owned his money. His money did not own him, because what Dave Ramsey was about to discover in Nashville, and what Seneca had written down in Rome 2,000 years earlier, is that there is a form of financial slavery that does not announce itself. It does not come with chains. It comes with a loan approval letter and a very reasonable monthly payment. The collapse did not arrive dramatically. It arrived quietly, through a single change in the rules that Ramsey had no power to stop. Here is the precise mechanism. Ramsey's real estate empire was built almost entirely on short-term bank loans, specifically 90-day callable notes. These were loans the bank could demand full repayment on within 90 days at any time for any reason. For years, the banks rolled those notes over automatically. No questions, no concerns. Ramsey was a model customer. The properties were performing. Everyone was comfortable. Then in 1987, the United States Congress passed the Competitive Equality Banking Act. It forced banks across the country to tighten their lending standards almost overnight. Banks in Tennessee began calling in their short-term loans. Not selectively, systematically, all of them, at once. Ramsey's entire financial structure had one fatal assumption built into its foundation: that the banks would keep rolling his notes. The moment that assumption proved false, the entire structure had nothing left to stand on. Within 24 months, Dave Ramsey had lost everything. Every property, every asset, $4 million, gone. Bankruptcy filed. A young family left exposed. But here is what the bankruptcy filing does not tell you. The real failure was not financial. The financial failure was just the symptom. The real failure was philosophical. Dave Ramsey had spent years building the appearance of wealth, without the reality of freedom. Every property he owned, he did not truly own. Every asset on his balance sheet existed only because a bank permitted it to exist. His entire identity as a successful, wealthy, powerful young man was borrowed, just like the money. The moment the bank changed its mind, Dave Ramsey discovered something brutal, that he had never actually been freed. He had been living in a prison that looked exactly like success from the outside. And in Rome, 2,000 years earlier, Seneca had a precise name for this condition. He called it servitude. Seneca did not predict Dave Ramsey's bankruptcy by name. He did something more remarkable than that. He described the exact psychological and financial conditions that make any bankruptcy, any collapse, inevitable. And he did it in a letter written to his friend Lucilius, roughly 2,000 years before the Competitive Equality Banking Act existed. This is what he wrote. He is a great man who uses earthenware as if it were silver, and a man no less great who uses silver as if it were earthenware. It is the sign of an unstable mind not to be able to endure riches. Read that sentence again, slowly. Seneca is not making a simple argument against borrowing money. He is making a precise psychological argument about what borrowed wealth does to a person's relationship with reality. The unstable mind, he says, is the mind that cannot function without the external trappings of wealth around it. The person who has borrowed not just money, but their entire sense of security, identity, and freedom from things that do not belong to them. That is Dave Ramsey in 1985. Every property on his balance sheet was not wealth. It was borrowed confidence, borrowed identity, borrowed freedom, all of it contingent on the continued goodwill of institutions he did not control. Seneca saw this pattern 2,000 years ago. He understood that the danger of debt is not primarily financial. It is philosophical. It is what debt does to your relationship with your own freedom. The central principle Seneca is drawing from here is Libertas, the Roman Stoic concept of true freedom. Libertas, for the Stoics, was not freedom to do what you want. It was something far more specific and far more demanding. It was freedom from external control. Freedom from conditions that could be removed by forces outside your own will. Freedom from the power of other people or institutions over the fundamental shape of your life. In Seneca's framework, the moment you carry debt you cannot repay on demand, you have surrendered a portion of your libertas to whoever holds that debt. Not metaphorically, literally. They now have a legal claim over your assets, your decisions, your future. You are, in a very precise sense, serving them. And now, after everything you have just heard, here is the question the title asked you. Did Seneca actually predict this? Or did he simply describe a universal pattern of human financial behavior that keeps repeating itself century after century, because we keep refusing to learn it? Verdict is coming, and it is not the one most people expect. Here is the verdict. Pre-bankruptcy Dave Ramsey violated the Stoic principle of Libertas. Completely, systematically, by design. He built a financial life that was entirely dependent on the continued goodwill of external institutions. His wealth was not real, it was contingent. It existed only as long as the banks permitted it to exist. His freedom was borrowed just like his money. And borrowed freedom is not freedom. It is an illusion with a monthly payment. That is the Stoic verdict on the $4 million collapse. Seneca did not just predict it. He diagnosed the exact philosophical error that made it inevitable. But here is where the story gets complicated. Because Dave Ramsey did not stay broken. He rebuilt. And in rebuilding, he constructed a financial philosophy that is, in its core architecture, almost perfectly Stoic. His baby steps program. Eliminate all consumer debt. Build a fully funded emergency fund. Own your car outright. Pay off your mortgage early. Build wealth through assets you genuinely own. That is Libertas. Written in modern American English. Broadcast on Christian radio. Sold in best-selling books with a Tennessee accent. Seneca would have recognized every single principle. So here is the real answer to the title of this video. Seneca did predict Dave Ramsey's $4 million collapse. He predicted it 2,000 years in advance. Because he understood the universal pattern, that debt creates dependency, dependency creates vulnerability, and vulnerability always, eventually, finds its moment. Post-bankruptcy Dave Ramsey spent 40 years teaching Stoic financial philosophy to millions of people, without ever once mentioning Stoicism. 2,000 years, 2 different men, 2 different languages, 2 different worlds, the same truth. The only difference between them is that Seneca understood it before the collapse. Ramsey needed the collapse to find it. One of those paths costs you nothing. The other cost him $4 million. Now, this is the part of the video that is actually about you, because you are almost certainly not building a $4 million real estate empire on 90-day callable banknotes. But there is a strong probability that you are making a smaller version of exactly the same mistake. And it is worth looking at clearly, without flinching. The modern version looks like this. You have a lifestyle that is funded by debt. Not dramatic, headline-grabbing debt, quiet debt, socially acceptable debt. The kind of debt that comes with a congratulations letter and a 0% introductory APR. A car on finance that signals a version of success you have not quite earned yet. A credit card balance that gets minimum paid every month while the interest compounds silently in the background. A mortgage that consumes 40 or 50% of your monthly take-home. Meaning that for nearly half of every working day, you are not building your future. You are servicing someone else's return on investment. That is Ramsey's mistake. Scaled down to fit a normal salary. Spread across millions of households. Normalized to the point where questioning it sounds strange. And the Stoic question, Seneca's question, is devastatingly simple. If your employer called you tomorrow and reduced your salary by 30%, would your lifestyle survive? Or would it collapse? Exactly as Ramsey's empire collapsed when the banks changed their minds? If the honest answer is collapse, then you are not free. You are, in Seneca's language, a servant to the current conditions of your income. And the conditions of your income can change. At any time. For reasons entirely outside your control. Seneca did not just diagnose. He prescribed. So here is the Stoic prescription, drawn directly from his letters, for your finances today. Step 1. Calculate your actual floor. Seneca practiced voluntary poverty, regularly imagining his life stripped of all external comforts, to understand what he truly needed to survive. Your version is simpler. Write down the absolute minimum monthly income you need to cover genuine necessities. That number is your financial floor. Everything above it is surplus. Knowing this number removes the anxiety that debt manufactures. Step 2. Identify your Libertas killers. Go through your financial commitments and ask, which of these has power over my decisions? Which of these determines what job I must keep, what risks I cannot take, what opportunities one cannot afford to consider? Those are your first targets. Step 3. Build your reserve. Seneca called this holding something back. Maintaining a buffer that meant no single external event could destroy his stability entirely. Your emergency fund is not savings. It is your Libertas fund. 3 to 6 months of genuine expenses. Liquid. Untouched. This single financial move changes your relationship with your employer, your bank, and your own daily anxiety, more than almost any other action you can take. Ramsey lost $4 million learning what Seneca wrote for free. You are watching this video. You have no excuse. Seneca wrote this near the end of his life. In one of his final letters to Lucilius.it is not the man who has little who is poor, but the man who always craves more. Dave Ramsey lost $4 million before he understood what that sentence meant. You do not have to. This video is for educational purposes only and is not financial advice. If you want the complete Stoic framework for building financial freedom, the free Stoic Money Guide is linked below. 7 Ancient Principles, written for modern money decisions. No charge. One question for the comments. Seneca said debt is philosophical slavery. Ramsey said cut up every credit card. Which philosophy are you actually living by right now? And give me one reason why. Subscribe if this channel changes the way you think about money.